Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Lindsay Paula with Pacific Gas and Electric. We thank you for joining us tonight for our public briefing on the public safety power shutoff event that began last night. Tonight, we're going to hear more on the weather forecast and the way the conditions have developed from our Chief Meteorologist, Scott Strenfeld. We'll also get a report from our incident commander, Mark Quinlan. He's going to tell us more about the restoration process that lies ahead. Finally, we'll also hear from our customer programs. Vanessa Bryan is a manager of our local customer experience, so we'll hear from her as well. As an overview, here's where we stand at this hour. We did turn off power to approximately 167,000 customers last night. We have begun inspecting lines and restoring power in some areas. We're going to continue to do that as the weather starts to clear in different areas. Currently, we have 50 community resource centers that are now open. I do want to note that 3 of those CRCs may have to close as a result of wildfires in those areas. We want to make sure that we keep our own employees and our customers safe. Our teams and our resources are pre-staged right now to return most customers to power by nightfall tomorrow on Wednesday. Now, before we go any further, we do have several members of the media on the phone. We are going to turn to them after our update, and we're going to take some questions from the members of the media. I want to remind the reporters on the line that you're going to need to press *1 to get into the queue with the operator in order to ask a question during the Q&A period. So let's start with our Chief Meteorologist, Scott Strenfeld. Scott, how have the conditions shaped up over the last 24 hours?
Yeah, good evening. So overnight last night into this morning, we did see some strong, dry Diablo winds materialize across Northern California. We did see some peak gusts near 60 miles per hour in the North Bay Hills and above 65 miles per hour develop in the northern Sierra Nevada. And as you can see on the slide, we do have a red flag warning across most of the state at this time. It's going to continue through at least Wednesday. I think the earliest they start to expire is Wednesday morning, if not Wednesday afternoon. And that's to kind of continue the red flag warning because we will see another peak in wind speeds, and I'll break that down for you in a second here. So this event is very dynamic, and I kind of want to break down a few of the elements. The first is that we're kind of sitting in a lull between the waves of this weather event. We saw the first wave overnight last night into early this morning across the Sierra Nevada and North Bay, and right now we're kind of in a lull between the waves. We do expect a second peak in winds overnight tonight, and lasting through early tomorrow morning across Northern California before diminishing. The second element I want to mention is that the offshore winds that we have, or these Diablo winds, have brought in a very dry air mass across the state of California. And right now, if you look across the state, relative humidities are running in the teens to single digits in areas. And, you know, as we know, vegetation is extremely dry out there and susceptible to ignition. And we expect those dry conditions to continue overnight. We're not going to see much in the way of humidity recoveries. And so that vegetation as we go into tomorrow is going to still be very susceptible to new fire ignitions. And so the other kind of element here is that in local areas where we do not expect the winds to rematerialize, earlier today we were able to issue the weather all clear in some localized locations to begin the restore and restoration process. And additional information, I believe, is going to be provided later in this briefing on those areas. Another element, too, is that we do expect Santa Ana winds to develop across Southern California this evening into tomorrow morning as well. And so we do expect south winds to flow over the Tehachapis and into the southern part of the San Joaquin Valley. And the timing on those winds, it's looking like they'll start to ramp up about 8 p.m. this evening, continue overnight before diminishing tomorrow morning. And just a quick note is that other utilities to the south of us are also considering PSPS due to those Santa Ana winds as well. And so the meteorology team here is going to continue to track conditions and weather stations overnight as the second wave arrives and the Santa Ana winds develop across the south. And we'll be providing the Emergency Operations Center at PG&E the intel they need to make informed decisions about the weather going to all clear. In general, the timing, we expect to be out of this wind event by tomorrow morning in some areas. I think the winds across the south may last through about 10 a.m. tomorrow, but things are looking much better after noon tomorrow. And then right now, looking at some of the long-range models, we don't see an event on the horizon for at least the next week after this. And so today we did continue to collaborate with the federal forecast agencies that we work closely with, the National Weather Service and other forecast agencies. And like I mentioned, those red flag warnings are going to remain in effect through tomorrow. And then other forecast agencies also recognize this risk period that we're in. And just to name a few, like the Northern and Southern Geographic Area Coordination Center are showing high risk and significant fire potential, at least lasting through Wednesday. And so that's really my weather briefing. I'll turn it back over to you, Lindsay.
Okay, Scott, thank you. I want to recap a couple of the highlights that I heard. We're still under a red flag warning here in major parts of California. Still, we're seeing a lot of low relative humidity and dry vegetation on the ground. We do have the all clear in some localities in our service area. And the good news that I heard was we don't see another wind event forecasted over the next 7 days. Is that about right?
Yeah, you got that all right. And yeah, one thing I'll add is that, this continues to be a very dynamic situation and we're monitoring it very closely, but all those points are right on.
Okay, terrific. Thanks so much, Scott. Let's get an operational briefing now from our incident commander, Mark Quinlan. Mark, what can you tell us tonight?
Thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, everybody. Mark Quinlan here with an operational briefing. Currently, as of the start of this briefing, we have roughly 167,000 customers out of service resulting from the public safety power shutoffs. We began de-energizing all of those customers last evening at approximately 9 p.m. and we continued that evolution all the way through the morning. It was a staggered type of de-energization sequence. I'm happy to report that it was completed safely without any types of impacts to the larger grid in California or to the interconnection. You can see that the scope primarily is in the northern portion of our service territory. It covers 21 counties and 7 tribes. One thing that Scott referenced in his remarks was the ability to adjust timing on the Kern County, which is to the far south of our service territory. When we safely de-energize the system, the Emergency Operations Center pivots and they monitor weather conditions continuously throughout the event. And as we see changes in the weather, we change with the weather. So the first thing that we were able to do was notice that the Kern County area, the scope, which is to the south end of our service territory, they were originally scheduled to be shut off at 2 p.m. this afternoon, or 1400 hours. But the weather conditions changed. We expect the winds to come, but we expect them later. So we were able to delay de-energization until 7 p.m. this evening, or 1900 hours. And we anticipate doing that and being successful in that effort. Along the line of changing weather conditions, we were also monitoring the system, monitoring the wind speeds that Scott covered throughout the day. We noticed 2 specific areas to where we could declare the weather all clear earlier than anticipated. The first area is in the northern area of the service territory in the Humboldt and Siskiyou counties. There's a section of scope there where we no longer believe that there is a weather threat. The winds are no longer at unsafe levels. So we proceeded with the patrolling process and the restoration process in those 2 counties. And then in the Southern Sierra part of the scope that you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, specifically in Tuolumne and Calaveras counties, there's a block of customers ranging between 30 to 35,000 customers that we believe can be able to be restored. So we're in the process of doing that work. The disadvantage with the time of day is that we're running out of daylight, so we won't be able to fly our helicopters in those specific areas. We do have ships in the air now, but they will be landing at sunset. and we will continue the patrolling process and the incremental restoration process through the evening until we are at first light, where we can get the air fleet back in the air. So the next slide covers really mitigations that we've been able to establish and avoid customer interruptions to the tune of 70,000 customers. The most significant block of that effort is really in the Humboldt County. We have a generating station there that has the ability to be placed into an island configuration and carry all of the customers and serve them without necessitating a shutdown, even though the transmission lines that flow into Humboldt County from the east needed to be taken out of service for safety. So we avoided those customer interruptions. And then the remainder of that 70,000 are really the temporary generation efforts that we've put forth. You can see 10 critical facilities, ICUs, hospitals, non-traditional medical facilities that have since been converted into medical purposes for purposes of COVID-19 pandemic concerns. We've been able to provide temporary power for that. The last thing I'll mention is the 200 grid sectionalizing devices that we have installed. We've actually installed 3 times that many devices, but in this event, with the scope that we can see on the right-hand side of the slide, roughly 200 of them were in play, and that helps shrink that outage to better match the area of weather risk. On the next slide, just want to cover, here's the restoration plan and the resources to be able to restore our customers. We're anticipating widespread all clears in the morning hours, overnight into tomorrow morning. And our employees have already been taking action today to segment the distribution system into smaller chunks so that we could incrementally and concurrently restore those distribution segments in our transmission lines very safely, very quickly. So we have a fleet of approximately 60 helicopters, 1 fixed wing aircraft to do aerial patrols, and just shy of 3,000 employees in the field that are doing everything that they can to get our customers and our communities back in lights after the extreme fire conditions have passed. So with that, Lindsay, I will turn it back to you. Maybe muted, Lindsay?
Thanks, Mark. Yes, I was muted. 167,000 customers out of power. We've adjusted the timing in Kern because of the weather coming in a little bit later, so we've delayed the energization there till about 7 o'clock tonight. Already out patrolling in areas where we've gotten the all clear. That includes parts of Humboldt, Siskiyou, and Southern Sierra. We were able to keep 70,000 customers in power, majority of those in Humboldt. And then we also had other customers that we were able to keep in power due to temporary generation. And again, you mentioned those 200 sectionalizing devices that we're using during this particular event, which really shrinks the outage and keeps more customers in power. And then finally, we're expecting the all clear in most locations tomorrow morning. We'll have aircraft up in the air, and we'll have about 3,000 boots on the ground doing those patrols, inspections, and getting the power back on. Does that about cover it?
It sums it up, and we're estimating that we can restore essentially all of our customers by end of day tomorrow.
Terrific. Thank you, Mark. So we also want to talk a little bit about what we're doing to support our customers who are affected by this power outage. So I'd like to bring in Vanessa Bryan now. She's with our local customer experience team. Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit about the community resource centers that are active and the work we're doing with our community partners?
Yes, thank you, Lindsay, and good evening, everyone. First, I want to say we understand that losing power certainly disrupts lives. With the heat wave, the smoky conditions, and special precautions in place because of COVID, this is particularly difficult and a difficult time for the power to be out. So we're working as quickly as we can to get it back on for our customers. As Mark said earlier, we've prepared all year to reduce the impact from PSPS events on our customers without compromising safety. And we're putting those improvements into practice now. So let me provide some updates on our customer resources during this event. First, regarding notifications, we've continued to send notifications to our customers, including restoral notifications to those areas where we received the all clear, as Mark and Scott mentioned. Those daily text messages, phone calls, and emails will provide an update on when customers can expect to have their power back and make plans accordingly. Customers can also expect to receive a notification once their power has been restored. And so we know that oftentimes folks will leave their homes and are not sure if the power is back on. So we will send you a notification once that power is back on. And it's a good way to check and make sure that that your home is in fact energized. If it's not, of course, you can call our contact center at 1-800-743-5002. I also want to touch on our website. We have seen over 1.2 million visitors to our website as of 2 p.m. today, and that site has continued to be able to handle the increased usage. I also want to mention that the website is now fully multilingual. So we have translated content in 13 languages for our customers that prefer to receive information in their language of choice. And in addition, we've adjusted our call centers to be able to handle, higher volume, higher number of calls. So throughout the event, we have supported over 5,000 calls. And as of today, we had an average wait time of approximately 24 seconds. Lindsay, you asked me to talk a little bit about our community resource centers. So I do want to give an update. We did open those for our customers today. So as of right now, we have 50 community resource centers in place that are currently supporting customers. And we've seen over 1,800 visitors. That was as of about 4:30 p.m. This afternoon. And we've handed out about 1,300 go bags. Now those include bottles of water, some information about how to prepare for PSPS, and also phone chargers for our customers. The operating hours of our customer resource centers are 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. That is expanded from last year, and that's during the course of the PSPS event. And as Lindsay mentioned, there were 3 CRCs that did have to temporarily close, either due to smoke or fire risk. And so I'd encourage customers to go to our website, that's pge.com/PSPS updates, for locations and any updates regarding closure. The centers do provide a safe location to meet the basic power needs of our customers, in particular charging medical equipment. You can also get up-to-date information about the PSPS event, and again, water, snacks, and other essential items to reduce the hardships on our customers. All of our community resource centers reflect appropriate COVID-19 health considerations and state and county guidelines. So all of the folks that are working there have facial covering. They are practicing physical distancing. We are limiting visitors at a particular site. Now, many of them are open air facilities, so we don't have a challenge with capacity, but for those indoor sites, we do want to meter who's in there so we can maintain that safe distance. We are completing temperature checks before folks enter those community resource centers, and we're sanitizing all the hard surfaces regularly. So we do ask that customers do not visit a community resource center if they're sick with a fever or cough, sore throat, or runny nose. So the last thing that I want to touch on really is our customers with medical needs. We know that turning off the power has an even greater impact on those folks who rely on power for medical or independent living needs. So we've made improvements this year to provide more help to customers with disabilities, hardships, language barriers, and other needs. For this event, we have over 10,000 customers that are part of our medical baseline program and are potentially impacted. So we've partnered with community-based organizations to assist those customers and provide information in different languages. We have 10 resource partners currently, and we're working to expand that every day. That 10 is hot off the presses. Community-based organizations are continuing to sign agreements with us to provide more resources to our customers during these events. In particular, we have partnerships with Meals on Wheels in a variety of different counties throughout our service territory. And in this event alone, they've supported 260 seniors by providing additional meals. They've provided wellness checks to make sure those folks are ready and know what to expect, and give them information on where the community resource center closest to them is located. We've also partnered with the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers and other organizations to conduct outreach and provide resources for the disabled and aging populations. In particular, the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers is going to provide more than 450 batteries to customers in need. Now, just today, we did receive through our contact center 13 customer escalations, and those folks may have needed a battery or perhaps even a hotel stay to keep that continuous power for their medical needs. So the independent living centers in the region worked with those customers to determine the right plan forward. To date in this event, we've also secured 23 hotel rooms for those customers. Again, really wanting to make sure that folks who are reliant on power for life sustainability have an opportunity to continue to get that power. So if you are an individual or you know someone who is reliant on power for medical or independent living needs, please encourage them to visit our website for more information. That's pge.com/disability and aging, or you can also go to www.cfilc.org. So as we close, I really want to, make sure that our customers know that we are going to continue to work to make these events as easy as possible on our customers. We want to encourage our customers to have a plan to stay safe during these severe weather events, and also visit our website, our Safety Action Center, which is safetyactioncenter.pge.com. This particular site has guides for folks to create that emergency plan and additional ways to stay safe and prepare for other emergencies. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Lindsay.
Okay, Vanessa, good information, and thanks to you and your team for all the work that you're doing. A couple of the highlights to remind our customers: we have 50 community resource centers open right now. The hours of those CRCs are 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. We've had about 1,800 visitors so far. Folks who do go to the CRCs can get updated information on the PSPS event. They can charge medical equipment, and they can also be assured that we're taking precautions with regard to safety, with regard to COVID. Also, we have partners that are helping us serve customers with disabilities and other needs. So please reach out if you have those types of needs, including the potential to supply batteries to those customers. Is that right, Vanessa?
That's correct, Lindsay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I want to turn the program now over to the reporters that we have with us tonight. And again, I want to remind the reporters, in order to ask a question, you do need to hit *1 to get into the queue for the operator to be able to give you to us so that we can hear your question. We'd like you to ask up to 2 questions, and when I call on you, please ask both questions right off the top, and then we'll direct them to the right person to answer your question. So tonight, we're going to start with Esteban Reynoso, or a representative from Action News Now in Chico. Esteban, are you with us again tonight? Do we have a representative from Action News Now on the phone? Okay, at this time, let's go down to the southern part of our service area, and we'd like to call on Kylie Walker, who's with KERO. Is Kylie on? Okay, at this time, I'm being told that JD Morris with the San Francisco Chronicle is ready and waiting with some questions. JD, good evening. JD, are you with us?
Lindsay, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, JD.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. Sorry about that.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was a little confused about the Community Resource Center closures. It sounded like you were saying three of the 50 may have to close, but then I thought I also heard that 3 had possibly already closed. So I was hoping you could clarify that. And also, where are they? And then I have another question about how this compares to your guys' goal to reduce blackouts by 1/3 compared to what they would have been under the same conditions last year.
Thanks, JD, for those questions. Let's go to Vanessa first with information on the community resource centers, and particularly, Vanessa, if you have information on the 3 that may be in areas that are being threatened by wildfires. And then Mark, I'd like it if you could take the second question about reducing the scope and the size of these events. So Vanessa?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for clarity, 3 of the CRCs did have to close early today. That was due to smoke and fire risk. 2 of those are in Butte County and 1 is in Yuba County. So we will continue to monitor conditions. Of course, we want it to be safe for our customers and our employees, and we'd encourage customers to visit our website to get updated details on those 3 locations. Again, 2 of them in Butte County and 1 in Yuba County.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. And Mark, can you take the second part of JD's question?
I sure can. JD, thank you for that question. As you made the good point, our objective from the 2019 PSPS season to the 2020 was to be able to reduce the impacts of public safety power shutoffs by about 1/3. I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that we're tracking at or better than that goal so far. I look at just the numbers provided in the presentation with what customers were avoided through the islanding, as well as through the temporary generation that we've installed through this event. There are other elements that we're going to look at once we get through the response. As part of our 10-day report process with the commission, we'll be looking at that. But to give you a high level of what we think additional savings were, really related to those 200 sectionalizing devices that were not installed last year. This year they are installed and they allowed us to shrink that footprint. But I want to go back to the weather forecasting, because every PSPS event starts with weather. And when we look at weather, we look at the high winds and we look at the dry fuels, and we look specifically on our grid, where does that exist? Once we identify that geographic area of danger, then we look to see what infrastructure exists within that area of danger, and that's what we isolate. So last year we had a 3-kilometer resolution weather program. This year it's a 2-kilometer resolution, which really put in layperson's terms, it allows us to get extremely precise. Think of it as a grid point system, and there's many grid points on our system with the 2KM model that allow us to really tighten that danger zone. And if you think about that, if that's smaller, then the number of assets from a transmission or distribution system, that shrinks as well. That reduces customer exposure. So very confident that we're meeting our goals in that area. Thanks for the question.
So Mark, just to sort of hit those points again, we're able to reduce the size of these events due in part to weather data that's just really more precise, and then also the sectionalizing devices, the temporary generation, and up in Humboldt, it's the islanding. So it's a combination of all of these factors.
That's right, Lindsay, combination.
Okay, great, thanks. Thanks, Judy, for the question. I want to remind the reporters on the line, we appreciate you calling in. We do need you to dial *1 in order to get into the queue to ask a question. I believe we have on with the Sacramento Bee, Leo Ahumada. Leo, are you on?
Hear me?
I can hear you, thanks. What are your questions for us tonight?
Well, I wanted to start off with when you mentioned that the power restoration is likely to happen for all customers by the end of tomorrow. Does that mean sundown, or does that mean at the end of the day? And then my next question would be, is there anything that you see that could delay that from happening, that could push it into maybe even Thursday morning?
Sure. Thanks for the questions, Leo. Mark, I think those are for you on operations. He's asking about anything that could potentially delay because we're in a fluid situation. And I believe you said we were expecting nearly full restoration by nightfall tomorrow. Is that accurate?
Yes, Lindsay, that's accurate. Leo, thanks very much for the question. So the commitment that we're making is to restore the 98% of our customers within 12 daylight hours of the weather all clear. As mentioned in my portion of the briefing, we're going to see these all clears come in right around daybreak, maybe a couple hours prior to that. So if you think about when daybreak starts, roughly 0600, 0700 in the morning, where it's safe to get our air fleet flying, our helicopters. You add 12 hours to that, it's roughly at the end of the day. So we're talking daylight. There is some risk with respect to damages that we might find. That's notwithstanding that. But the way that we restore, we also follow up our patrollers when we find the damage, and we have repair crews make repairs concurrently while the patrols continue to progress. So it's not as if we patrol 100% of system, then restore it. It's an incremental process, and damages that we find along the way, we repair along the way. So confident that we're going to be able to be successful at that by end of day tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I believe we have one other reporter still left with us on the line, and that's Kylie Walker. She's with KERO in Bakersfield. Kylie, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. My first question would be, could you kind of talk about the decision making behind the shutoffs and who is part of that decision making? And then my second question would be, if this is going to be delayed, the power restoration, are there procedures in place if it's going to be extended, and what are they?
Sure, Kylie. So Mark, let's have you talk about the decision-making process and who's involved in that process. And then if you can talk a little bit about if restoration is delayed, what those impacts are, and then maybe Vanessa can jump in and talk about how we support our customers if restoration is delayed due to a fluid situation, or as you said, we find damages.
Thank you, Kylie, for the questions. I'll take the first one. The decision-making process, how we make that decision. I want to start by saying that we take that decision very seriously because we understand the impacts to public safety, both from catastrophic wildfire ignitions and from lights being off. We also understand how inconvenient that is. You heard Vanessa reference that at the top of her remarks. I couldn't reinforce that enough. We have employees and family members that are going through this as well. It's tough. We understand that. So we don't take the decision lightly. We take it very, very seriously. And it really starts with the weather intelligence, the data, so that we make a risk-informed, data-driven decision. So when the Emergency Operations Center is open, we have members of my command and general staff that all come together, and we go through a number of data elements, and we ensure that we have everything that we need to be successful. All the notifications were made to customers, to the medical baseline and the vulnerable communities. We care incredibly about those folks and want to ensure that they're going to be safe. We message to our agency partners, and then we come together and we make the decision with the officer in charge based on the data that we review. Once that decision is made, then we monitor the weather. And if the weather changes, we look for opportunities to delay the shutoffs. If the weather changes to our benefit and things improve sooner than forecast, then we look to start restoration sooner. So that's kind of how that decision process works. If I go into your second part of the question about if there are going to be delays in restoration, is there a procedure for that? The procedure for that is to communicate very transparently to our agency partners and to the communities and customers that we serve when we begin the patrolling and the restoration of our system, we send out messages that we've received the all clear from a weather perspective, and our men and women out there are patrolling, ensuring that everything is safe, and then we restore incrementally. We also provide an estimated time of restoration. People want to know what time their lights are going to be back on. We understand that, and we do the best that we can to let people know what that time is. And if it changes, we need to change the ETOR and re-communicate that. So it's all about sharing what we know, when we know it, with the people that matter. So thank you for your questions.
Thanks, Mark. Vanessa, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And Lindsay, we have included that estimated time of restoration since the very first notifications went out, and we continue to update those, to Mark's point, as conditions change. Should restoration take longer, we will send out a new notification to our customers, letting them know that that restoration time has changed, and they can expect to receive those updates daily until power has been restored. I also want to reassure customers that our community resource centers will stay open for the duration of the event. So again, if that duration is extended, resources will still be available for our customers. So thanks for the question, Kylie.
Okay, good to know. So as we wrap up here tonight with our public safety power shutoff briefing, I want to thank again Scott Strunfeld, Mark Quinlan, Vanessa Bryan, and the reporters who joined us on the call. Want to remind everybody that a PSPS is really a tool of last resort that we use to prevent catastrophic wildfires in our service area. We really do appreciate our customers' patience. We know it is hot out there. We know conditions are not optimal right now for this type of a shutoff, and we really do appreciate your patience. Again, Mark said we were expecting full restoration or near full restoration by nightfall tomorrow for all of our customers. The PG&E employees will be out in force tomorrow to make sure that that happens. For further updates and for more information, we direct you to pge.com/PSPS updates. You'll also find some helpful videos there that can tell you more about our decision-making process and the improvements we have made this year to try to make these events smaller for our customers, shorter in duration, and smarter for all of you. So again, please stay safe. Thanks for joining us today. Good night.